On remote Lummi Island in the northwest corner of Washington State, it is spring 2026 and artist Ann Morris is getting ready to meet the day with her beloved corgi. In 1984, Ann left her home in California. Now, over 40 years later, Ann Morris, at 91, is continuing to create and exhibit original art.
I came here in '84. I had an artist friend who had a studio, who bought a summer house here, and she invited me to come up, and I came 3 summers in a row. And the 3rd summer, I saw this house that was for sale, and I said, I'm going to go look at that. I went to look at it and decided to buy it, and have lived here for 40 years since that time in that same house. And my practice is I wake up every morning, have my coffee, my breakfast, take the dog for a mile walk down the road. We get into the car and drive to the studio and stay there for as long as my energy holds out.
Her art studio, workshop, and gallery are located half a mile from her home on a 15-acre parcel of land known as Sculpture Woods. Here, her large bronze sculptures are set in the land on carefully selected sites and are on public display. Ann wanted to take her art out of doors and into natural surroundings. I hope that the pieces will speak to them personally, and if it does, that's good, and if it doesn't, it makes no difference. Well, and I think that's a wonderful thing, that the space itself has provided a containment for the art. And I realized after several of the pieces were in the woods that I wasn't just making sculpture. What I was making was a place. And I hadn't thought about that. I just said, oh, I think that's what's happening.
I have known Ann many years, I would say 25, 30 years. And she's what I call one of my art comrades, one of the fabulous fours, and I'm not talking about the Beatles, I'm talking about Ann Morris, Susan Benenstrom, and Sharon Elmthalt, and myself. We get together every Friday, and we walk every Friday morning. And we've done this for, at least 25 years. And we walk and we talk about art. We talk about our art problems, what we're doing, what we're figuring out, what's working, what's not working. And getting to know Ann was one of the things that I look back on and think, this is a really special woman. And the first thing I remember thinking about her was that she is slight. She's not too, she's very slight, tiny, small. But powerful. So you have this little person making these giant, sensuous, big sculptures. And she just kind of exuded this sense of presence and, dare I say, natural power. And so, like I said, I'm the lucky one to have known her or all these years, and I look forward to knowing her more for many more years to come. Rooster in background. Okay.
In the early 1970s, I got interested in silkscreen printing, and these are some of the pieces that I did. And I was printing these in a room off our bedroom in my house, and all of a sudden I said I needed some new space. So I was able to get a studio in downtown Los Angeles and had a dream about a series of big horns surrounding and blessing the space. When I had my dream about the swirling horns in my new Los Angeles studio, I realized that I was given some horns from a friend, and I made plaster bandage casts of that so that I could be this elongated space. And then I did a cast of myself at the top and a cast of myself at the bottom, and decided that it needed to be on this stick. And then I added these. I'm not sure what these leaves are, but they needed to come and be on the bottom. I had a friend who was also an artist that I had met in LA, and she decided to move to Lummi Island and invited me to come visit her. 3 summers in a row I came, and the 3rd summer I decided I'm going to live on Lummi Island. And once I did that, I asked a friend to come and plaster bandage me, and both the top one and the bottom one. And I decided, since I was in the Pacific Northwest, that I would cover this figure with cedar bark. And because this was a new adventure for me, I called this Risk. After I did the full-size plaster bandage piece of myself, I decided to ask various friends to sit for me so I could wrap them in plaster bandage. This one is my dear friend Charlie Baker, and as a fisherman, I wrapped him in salmon skins. These are other neighbors, and they are covered in a granite material, the male figure with a coarser ground and the female figure with a more softer ground. And then this figure is covered in beads, put on one at a time. After I did the pieces that we have already seen that are in the studio building, I did these 2 pieces, and they were able to stand when I finished them, but then I wanted to add these male and female figures on the back so that the man has a female figure, as does his psyche, and the female figure has a male figure as she has in her psyche. And I call this piece Double Dream. And it turns out that Tom J. had a foundry. And so I asked him if he would be willing to cast it. And he said, well, I'm not sure we want to be public figures, but we will cast it. And so they did.
I'm Sharon Antholt. I'm an artist here on Lummi Island, and I've lived here almost 30 years. And I met Ann Morris soon after I came here, about 30 years ago. It's a great place to be an artist. It's a wonderful place to do the things that artists do, which is to find a way forward with their work that is productive and personal, and not be distracted by other things. It's a very different kind of place than making work in Washington, D.C., which was right in the middle of the city. It was I felt a shift when I came here. And it took a while for me to get used to it, but I can't imagine doing anything else right now. This is just perfect. So about 5 years after we moved here, we built this studio, and this is where I work. And for Ann Morris, she is one of the most productive artists I have ever met. She had a show a year ago, and she already has enough work to have another show now. And I think I have 3 pieces. I had a show a year ago now, and I have 3 pieces which aren't quite finished. They're in the process. So Anne, when I met her, she was, I think, still doing large bronze pieces, but sometime after that, she began to do smaller works. For example, one of the first pieces I bought of hers was a boat. She made wonderful boats. She made a frame of a boat out of some kind of reeds, and then she would fill it or weave into it something that she found from nature. Her work is always about nature, or always includes nature, or made from nature. And now she has shifted to something else. They are unusual, very personal things that she makes. I've never seen anything like them. They're usually hung from above, and they're made from all kinds of materials and fabrics, and sometimes people give them to her. When we would take walks, Anne would very often find something on the walk. She'd say, oh, I need this for my work, and she'd collect them. And we'd help her sometimes bring them back to the car, or she would haul them herself and use them somehow in her work. And so her work is very much connected and part of Lummi Island because of that connection. She knows the names of all kinds of things which we never do, and can tell us where they're grown and what they do, and whether they're poisonous or whether you can eat them. And yeah, she's quite connected that way.
This piece is one of the first pieces small pieces that I made after the large bronzes that are at the studio. I was up at Charlie Baker's farm, tripped over a sheep skeleton, collected it, and decided that it needed to be living in a boat. So that's how this piece came to be. I decided that I wanted to have this skeleton turned into bronze. And I also decided that I wanted it to be living in this long boat. So I presented this boat in wax and the bones intact to the River Dog Fine Arts Foundry so they could do the casting. The previous boats that I made were all made out of wax, and then they were given to the foundry for casting. And at some point I decided that I would like to try to make a boat all by itself. So I had some cork, and I cut the cork in strips, and then it was very easy to form a boat. So then I had a boat that was all wobbly. So I asked the foundry to cast the cork boat for me, which they did. And then I filled them with various bird bones, plant materials, etc. I've always been interested in natural vegetation, I guess I would have to say. And have you seen in the aluminum boats that I did, the little bones were also incorporated with some natural materials. And so I'm always on the lookout for a material that I find the texture interesting, the pattern interesting, whether or not it'll bend, whether it'll assume a shape that I want it to be in. And so that's sort of the natural process for me. An artist friend of mine invited me to come to Lummi to visit her. And when she picked me up at the airport, she said, "Oh, and tonight we're having dinner at my house, and there's a special friend I'm inviting." Well, it turned out it was Charlie. But one of the things that I realized about Charlie was that he, at that time, was a full-time fisherman, and he absolutely understood how Mother Nature rules the world, and what about the seasons, about the tides, about the weather.
And I was just very engaged with his understanding there, and the fact that he was willing to include me in some of those adventures. So that's been very important to me. And so because we have been connected for such a long time, and both of us are now getting old, we have agreed that we're going to call each other every morning to make sure we're respectively alive, and that if nobody answers the phone, we come to their house to see whether their body needs to be rescued.
I'm Susan Bennerstrom, and I'm a painter in Bellingham. Over the years, Anne Morris has become a really dear friend and is part of a group of 4 of us artist women who get together every Friday. I've just been amazed at the range of Anne's work over the years. She's moved from the large, powerful bronze figures to working on a smaller scale. She had a residency at the Ballinglen Arts Foundation in Ballycastle, County Mayo, Ireland, a few years ago, and that was a residency that both David and I had had a few years before. And during that time, she was building boats out of hanging and boats on pedestals made out of natural materials. Very beautiful. And since then, she's moved more towards making hanging pieces also out of natural materials and out of fabrics that she deconstructs and assembles on rings hanging from the ceiling or from a wire. And they're both delicate and strong at the same time, and with a never-ending range of shapes and aesthetic considerations. I'm very lucky that Anne is my friend.
I've gotten into the habit of collecting plant material so that I can use them to become the center of my hanging pieces. And so I have a nice little pair of clippers in my car. Whenever I see something, I stop the car, clip them, and bring them home. So this is just an example of some of these pieces. They're all slightly different. These hanging pieces started off with fabric. I unraveled some of the fabric, and in doing so, the fabric decides what it wants to do all by itself. And it decides to twist, which I didn't particularly care for, so that in some instances I decided to just slice it so that it would hang straight down. And then lots of these are done with natural materials. We have the horsetails again, and peacock feathers. Natural materials here, feathers here, more peacock feathers, Japanese paper, just a very nice paper that a friend gave me.
Anne is an incredibly generous person, very private and very generous. She has given her astoundingly beautiful property and studio to Western Washington University for their use. And she has, years ago, she opened up her property to the public so that people can come and walk through the sculpture woods and look at her big bronze sculptures, and also go to her little gallery that she has there next to her studio.
And then when I'm gone, I hope that they will invite artists to come and use the space and make an arrangement that is beneficial to everyone. And I think that will happen, but as long as I'm there, it can't really happen. Because I refuse to give the space up.